So we hear all the time about, someone's not okay. Something's wrong with them. I think they need to take a time out, take a break. Are they okay? Are they looking at their emotional health? Is it, blown out of proportion, or is this something?
Yes.
Mental health is blown out of proportion?
I think it's being used as an excuse by some. I think it is now become like, oh, it's the in thing. It's the trigger word that you say, oh, I need a mental health day, and everybody needs to back off because they have something going on. I'm sorry. I think it's being used as an excuse to not perform, not get things done. And there are people out there legitimately who have mental health issues, but I think we're raising the younger generation to be weak.
I wholeheartedly disagree. You're always going to have people who
milk the system.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Whether it was like sick days or, no, you say it's mental health days. Mm-hmm. There's always going to be those, call them bad actors. But mental health absolutely needs to be in the discussion as it pertains to the working world. And companies who develop policies and build awareness for mental health, they're the ones that are more attractive because people are thinking, oh, good, a company that understands.
I can go on STD because it'll be easier for me to go on short-term disability.
Oh, no, they got to you, huh? The boomers. See, I think, look, a lot of this comes from the fact that, and I seem to rail on the boomers every time I'm out here, but.
And I'm not a boomer, so yeah. I don't take offense.
You probably work with them.
Some.
You got the boomer influence.
Some.
Yeah, so.
But boomers have their other issues.
Yeah, they got plenty of issues. A lot of it is you'll hear the term weakness, right? And we've talked in the past about how they're the ones who like to show up and not take sick days and really boast about presenteeism and, hey, look at me, I'm in the office, nothing stops me, I'm strong.
Okay, well, I don't agree with that. To me, that's nonsense. Yeah. If I'm sick, I'm going to take a sick day. But when
that's a physical health issue.
That's a physical, and there are days, I'm not saying they're not days where, mentally I'm not there because I'm overwhelmed. And I've had to okay, I need to take a step back, but instead of okay, I'm not going to go to work and lay in bed for a week. I'm okay, what can I remove from my life and my schedule to kind of give me that mental break that I need? So I'm not saying show up to work regardless of what's going on in your life. That's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. But I hear, millennials, maybe some Gen Xers who are oh, I have to work and I'm taking this course and it's just so stressful. I need to take a few weeks off because things are getting to me.
Okay, I'm with you, Keisha. I think it's gone too far. Right. So I don't think we go as far as if someone needs a day, or take a day off early, or they don't look like they're themselves that day. You know what? Why don't you go home, right? Whether it be 10 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I think that's okay, right? Yeah. But when it's just hey, everyone gets 5, paid off days without any question.
That's fantastic.
Well, it could
mental
be
health days.
Maybe it could be used for anything, and no one's going to ask any questions. But is it gone too far where basically, I was watching something recently where you give people an option and they're always going to resort to it, right? Where I know you're saying that there's bad actors, but the problem is that becomes the norm eventually, not immediately, but within 10 or 15, maybe. So for example, say the government, makes it a mandate where every company has to give 10, mental health days a year, for example. So maybe the first couple of years, people will just use 1 or 2 a year. But after 20 years, everyone's going to use the full 10 because, that's allocated to them and they should use it, right? So I think you are making people weaker when you're giving people, you're almost encouraging it, right?
No.
But I think companies do have a responsibility to have things in place like support EAP programs with their benefits. You should have, coverage for, do you need a psychologist or whatever? But I think I'm on board with all that. But I do think that this focus and push is almost like you're pushing people to claim mental health.
It's a long time coming. What I was saying earlier about boomers, their sense of weakness came from, not being able to show up physically or taking sick days. They recognize that the physical element purely, which is why suddenly there's like this push that, hey, mental health is just important. There's a lot of adverse effects that happen when you're stressed, when you're depressed, when you're working too hard, when you're, going through so much stuff mentally. I don't think a lot of people get that. I think the fact that they can't look at you, fall into pieces and be like, okay, cool, you're clearly have a problem. They're relying on us to say, you know what, I really need this, I'm going through a lot of stress right now. And for them, and maybe not just boomers, I'll lay off the boomers a little bit, but maybe it's just the people who think like, well, I work at the same job, I'm fine, why are you stressed? We have the same schedule, we have everything.
But doesn't it push you to be a little bit better though?
Sorry?
Doesn't it push you to be a little bit better?
Then what?
Like, so for example, I'm trying to, bench press 100 pounds. And you say, you know what?
No.
I bench 120.
Be stronger.
I think like
when you have to acknowledge what you're going through, okay, and that's what mental health is.
But
it's saying that like I can't handle all this stuff. It's not about like stiff upper lip. Let's keep going. Again, that's like a dated attitude. Like, you know what? I have to tough it. Rather than acknowledge what you're going through and deciding that, you know what?
Let me give an example. You're working with someone, you guys have this deadline or whatever it is. It doesn't have to be a deadline. You guys are working together, whether it be in a company or a business or it's a marriage. Okay. And one person says, you know what, I'm exhausted. I can't do this.
Right.
So do you just default, okay, no problem, go for it. Like, or do you say, well, I'm sure just having a tough day, take 15 and, like.
We have to listen to people who say they're going through shit.
But the problem is, I don't know if
not to say like,
I don't know if you feel this, Keisha, but I feel that people take advantage of that.
Yes,
right?
I do. I agree. And because if like, I know people in their 20s, late 20s, okay, grew up in a 2-person household. Both parents are around. I grew up in a single parent household. They went to university, graduated with no student loan debt. They got a job. Their parents are always there to bail them out, helping them with, down payment. But they're seeing a psychiatrist or psychologist for their trauma. Like, what was your trauma? Right. I was the youngest and I never had a voice.
I think I agree with you because I think they're just basically over analyzing and giving everyone a symptom or diagnosing them with something, right? Some sort of, syndrome or some sort of disease or some sort of something. Right?
Yeah.
And it's just getting a little bit too much, I think.
We're finally at a place where mental health is being, brought into the spotlight, right? Where it's finally being acknowledged. COVID destroyed people mentally.
I agree with that.
They absolutely destroyed people. People going back to work and their coworkers saying, well, what's wrong with him? Like, I went through the same thing you did. It's this complete lack of empathy. And to your point, if someone says, man, I'm having a tough time, I really need some time. Yes, you absolutely listen, no question. We're not at the point where it's like, okay, well, I'm doing the same stuff as you and I'm okay. So therefore it must just be a little bit of stress. No, this is it. And I know it feels weird to sort of like lean heavily into this idea that like, yes, we have to now acknowledge people based on what they say. And yes, to your point, Keisha, you're going to have people who say like, oh, mental health day, I guess. Let's try and milk it a bit.
I think we're kind of two ends of the spectrum here.
Yeah.
I'm getting more and more polarized on Keisha's side, but I don't think I'm like 100% where it's like sorry, period. I think there's always I'm always trying to understand, right? I think you can encourage people to do better and try a bit more, and then if you have to give it, all good, right? Someone's trying to bench 100. I know you can do 120. I can't just do 2 more. There's some positivity there, right? Than just giving up, right?
Yeah, but the encouragement, I know what you're saying. Yeah. You're saying like, I can help you work through this. You're thinking like a little encouragement and you'll kind of get through your adversity. But maybe what you have to do instead of pushing like through that particular problem is push them to like, find help.
So let me just take it let me take it a little bit different. Maybe it's from my experience. Like, if you've been managing people for a long time or if you're a landlord, as a landlord, I've been doing it for about 15 years or maybe longer. I've had, dozens of different tenants, maybe, dozens definitely. And, every tenant's like, oh, this happened or that happened. My car broke down and I had to spend this much on the car and this and that. So I can't pay rent, right? So, okay, when is it enough? Like, do you have to be understanding every time, right? So, okay, you have someone, they're a tenant, they give you an excuse. They pay the rent first 2-3 months. And then it happens. Oh, I got paid late, or my boss didn't pay me today. Well, can I pay you next week? And then all of a sudden, after 6-8 months, you have to kick him out, right? And then the next tenant, same thing happens, right? 2-3 months on time. Then the same excuses, right? So then you see that happen like 3 times in a row, or 5 times in a row. You're like, okay, people are taking advantage of me or the situation here, right? As a manager, I don't know if you've seen it, where people seem to like never use excuses. They just get the work done. And even if it's not, some people don't get the work done, but they just keep trying and eventually they get there. And then others, like the first obstacle, there's a problem, right? Second obstacle, there's a problem. So I'm saying from our point, I don't want to speak for you, but in my point of view, in my experience, I see it way too often where it's the usual suspects, where if it's not that excuse, is another excuse. If not that, it's another excuse, right? Whereas others were like, you know what, when they give you not an excuse, but when they give you a reason, hey, I'm having a tough day, you're like, believe them, just because they have the track record of like, I've worked for this person for like 3 years or 6 months. They've never really had this. Okay, they must be going through something, right? Whereas some other people, they'll start a job in the second day. Like,
there's an issue.
Right?
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It's my experience.
And I think we're kind of, we're sharing a common ground with our discussion. Because, when you guys say like, is like this emphasis on mental health making us weaker, I don't think you think that people acknowledging their mental health makes them weak. No, and that's not what you're saying. No. That's not what they're saying. You guys are saying the people you just described, the ones who look for excuses, may lean on this a little bit more.
That's the crutch.
Yeah, so maybe people who are kind of already problematic to begin with, who have those.
Are you just empowering them to just be lazier and use more excuses, where you can't ask questions or you can't let them go because they're leading on that crutch, right? Whereas someone else that's proven, like sometimes I every now and then thinking like, you know what, I just got to take the half day, or I just got to not talk to someone for like, a few hours, right? But when you have repeated, examples of certain people using it, is this, what we're in for in like 20 years? Where everyone's like, okay, I'm just gonna. What happened to all this time where people didn't need numerous days of mental health days, and all of a sudden now that it's there, all of a sudden everyone gets 10, right? They have to use 10, right? Now I'm not, and I totally encourage people to pace themselves, take a little break. I'm just thinking maybe we're going a little bit too far. We're formalizing it, and you're making it like something that people are entitled to rather than
something that they need, and it should be available, and resources should be there to help them work through it and be able to function in what's normal for them, not what's normal for me, based on what's normal for them. And I think working for an organization where, again, there's balance, where you should have paid time off. You should have, whether it's a sick day because you're physically or you're mentally exhausted. But I think when you were talking about the boomers, where you're showing up every single day, they're not taking vacation, to me, that's nonsense. And that's why I will make sure I take my vacation. And when I'm on vacation, I am checked out, like from work. I'm not one of those people checking my emails or doing any of that stuff, because I need that mental break so that when I come back, I'm refreshed. And I'm fortunate that I haven't had to take a mental health time off, extended time off from work. But there are days where I know I don't produce as much because mentally I'm just not there. But I'm not going to, not come to work for like a week or think I can't function based on my sense of normal because I'm having an emotional crisis or something. And I just think that the way it's being pushed is like we're encouraging people to use that as an excuse to not perform, not show up, not do what you need to do to get through life.
Yeah. And I can see your point. I think there could be people that, like, I don't know any personally who you know, because obviously I don't probe if someone's like, I need a mental health day. What's wrong with you? But yeah, I can see that what you're saying is that like the more this becomes you know, top of mind for people, part of the conversation, that people are going to say, hey, you know what, I can use that. But I think it's important that we go there as a society, that we acknowledge this, that companies acknowledge this, that it's up there with physical sick days. And yeah, you may see it go too far, but then we get to the point where we scale it back. But I think we're on the right track with finally acknowledging it.